Hi friends, Emily Midgett here with you today on the Pinkfresh Studio YouTube channel, and today I have a project featuring the new Nothing But the Best stamp set that was released with the November 2023 release. This stamp set features a really lovely bouquet of, I think they are anemone flowers, and I think that anemones are one of the unsung heroes of holiday floral arrangements. I think they're so beautiful, especially when they're that really deep jewel-toned red. So I'm going to be pairing my anemone arrangement with some a foiled sentiment from the Perfect Sentiments holiday, which I'm going to be mounting on a tag cut from the Shaker tag book set. I'm also going to be adding a bow from the Wraparound Elements die set, and we're going to be watercoloring the anemone arrangement with some Caron markers. These watercolor markers are really quick and easy to use with a watercolored floral arrangement. And I'm just heat embossing the large floral arrangement from Nothing But the Best onto some watercolor paper. This is Fabriano Artistico cold press watercolor paper, and I've heat embossed it using silver embossing powder. Now, what I have here, I've just got, it's a plastic plate that I got at Target, and I scribble out my watercolor markers, my Caron watercolor markers, onto that plate. And I like to pick up the paint, the pigment, with my damp paintbrush. I find that the color moves a little bit more easily when there's some water added to it, when I add that extra dampness from my damp paintbrush to that watercolor. These markers, I've found them a little bit finicky to work with sometimes, depending on the watercolor paper that I'm using. If I use them directly to the paper, sometimes the color doesn't really want to move, and I like to have a nice smooth fade from where I've laid down the color to the edge of my flower petals. And so this allows me to have a little bit more control over that, the highlights versus the dark areas. So I like to scribble that color out onto my palette just to try to get a little bit extra control. Now you can see I am rotating my paper, as I always do. I rotate my paper so that the tip of my paintbrush is pointed away from me. This allows me to be able to see where my color is going on my watercolor paper, and it allows me to have a little bit more control over where that color is going if I can see where it is. So now I've laid down the first layer of color. It was kind of a candy apple red color. Now I'm going to use the burgundy Caron marker to add some deeper highlights or some deeper shadows to this floral arrangement. I wanted to create this really lovely kind of ruby jewel toned arrangement of anemones because I wanted to make a Christmas card. I think that anemones are such a beautiful flower, and they can be used in so many different ways. And I saw a friend of mine got married and had these incredible red anemones in her wedding bouquet, her bridal bouquet. And they had these really intense black centers. And I thought, how gorgeous is that for a Christmas arrangement, a Christmas bouquet? So I was really excited to use this stamp set for a Christmas card. So I am taking that burgundy marker and I am adding little areas, the areas that I want to be a little bit more shadowed. I'm adding that dark burgundy marker to it. Now with this darker color, it is easy to add a little bit too much water sometimes to your paper. And with these Caron markers especially, it's easy for, if you add too much water to your paper, sometimes the color spreads a little bit too much. We get that blooming effect that we've talked about in previous videos, where you add the water and the watercolor will seek that dampness of the paper. It'll seek the moisture in that paper. So your watercolor will spread. And sometimes, especially with pan watercolors, it will have a lovely watercolor effect, but these Karin markers, sometimes it spreads a little bit too much, so you have to be careful with how much water you're adding to your paper. So they do take a little bit of practice, but I think they are really easy and quick way to add some pretty colors because they have a lovely array of shades in the box of watercolor markers. So I am adding some more shadows to like the areas of the petals that are kind of curled over on one another. The petals that are tucked behind, I'm adding that dark burgundy red, which after you add water to it, it's not so intense. It's not so dark. It's not that kind of mahogany brown color. It's more of a dark maroon color. So I do go back eventually. You can see here that I am adding another layer of the burgundy to that petal, and I'm pulling the color out with the tip of my damp paintbrush. And that's just to intensify the color. Now we are going to take the marker directly to the paper. I do not recommend doing this on the first layer just because the color seems to seep down. Excuse me. The color seems to seep down inside the watercolor paper and not really want to move. But once you have that initial layer of color laid down, it seems to work a little bit more smoothly. It seems to move a little bit more smoothly. And so this really intensifies those shadows. When you add the marker directly to the paper, the shadows get that much more intensified because the color is completely concentrated. You have not added any water to that color like you would if you had scribbled it on your palette and picked it up with your damp paintbrush. You're adding completely concentrated, 100% concentrated color to your paper. And so you're getting the benefit of that intensity of the color. And so you can really intensify those shadows and create lots of really nice contrast between the lighter petals on the top of the arrangement and the darker petals, the ones that are more in the shadow underneath. So now we're going to go ahead and start working on the foliage. I'm just going to do some very simple watercoloring with the foliage. I have scribbled out olive green onto my palette, and I'm picking it up again with my damp paintbrush. Now this is we're just doing some very simple, because this particular illustration is a little bit more whimsical and not super, super detailed. We have a little bit of leeway with how detailed we can be or have to be with this illustration. We can be a little bit simpler. So I'm adding a single layer of watercolor to some of the petal or some of the leaves. And then I'm going to go back in and again add my deeper shadows with the marker directly to the paper. This helps to intensify some of those areas where there's like this leaf cluster that you can kind of see. There are some leaves that are kind of tucked behind. They're tucked underneath the flowers. And so we're just intensifying some of those shadows by putting that marker directly to the paper. So now we're going back in. This is olive black. This is one of my favorite markers to use for intensifying shadows, really, really intensifying those shadows and making them really super vibrant and intensifying that contrast between the lighter areas and the darker areas of the shadowed pieces. And now it comes time for the black centers of the flowers. I wanted to create that kind of unique, intense black center on the anemones because I think that is just so classic and so elegant. So now I've used the coordinating die from the Nothing But the Best set product suite to die cut this image, and it is a fairly large image. So we're going to cut it in half because of the way that I decided to arrange it on the card front. But first we're going to die cut some little accents. I've got a black glitter bow from the Wraparound Elements die set. I thought that was just super cute for a Christmas card. And then we've also got the diagonal stitched plaid. This just adds a little bit of extra texture behind those bright pops of that jewel red anemones that we're going to have on the card front. So you can see I'm fiddling around with the arrangement here. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do it, how I want to finally arrange this, and I decide to chop this in half. You have to be brave sometimes when you're making cards, and so using my trimmer to just chop it in half allows me to create kind of a visual cascade from the top left of my card down to the bottom right. And so I finally have an arrangement that I am pleased with, but I am going to add the ornate rectangle frame. I have an extra die cut left over from when I was creating from the release, cut from some really beautiful sparkling glitter paper. And I'm just going to add that with some foam tape and adhere my two floral arrangements with some foam tape as well. And then it's time to start adding the sentiment. I'm going to adhere the bow with some liquid adhesive and then add my hot foiled die cut greeting directly to that vellum tag. And before we adhere the tag down to the card front, and then I hide the adhesive, the foam adhesive, behind that solid sentiment die cut. So the final touch is just to add a few matte silver pearls to kind of tie into the silver elements. I've got 3 different silver elements with the silver embossing, the silver foiled sentiment, and now the silver pearls. And I think this is just such an elegant holiday card that maybe is a little bit unexpected. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you learned something. If you liked the video, maybe give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to see more content from us in the future. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.